let me throw something at you, a scenario, and then you can
Sure.
tell me if this is out in left field or if it's actually spot on. Um,
Okay.
Hearing you speak, a scene of a movie comes to mind. It's a movie called The Beautiful Mind. A Beautiful Mind. Russell Crowe is a true story of John Nash, who was a Princeton professor who suffered from schizophrenia. Great movie. And in the movie, there's so obviously he has schizophrenia, so he sees certain people that don't exist. You know, they only
Hmm.
exist in his mind. And of course, this creates a whole lot of problems for him with his family and friends and so forth, and his career as well. So at one point, his wife has had it with it, you know, because he doesn't want to take the medications because the medications won't let him teach, et cetera, et cetera. And she's about to leave him. And he comes to a moment of lucid thought, what I call lucid thought, where he realizes that one of the characters in his mind is this little girl that has been a little girl for years and years and years, meaning she doesn't grow. So obviously, if she doesn't grow, she can't be real. So he has this window of lucid thought, and he realizes she doesn't age. She
Yeah.
can't be real. I have a problem. I will fix this. Don't leave me. I got this, right? And then he, as a result of that moment of lucid thought, he takes action, right? And the action leads to him living a long life, you know, and he lived a long life, from then on, he made adjustments and so forth. So when it comes to anxiety, do we get those moments of lucid thought, however short they may be, so that then we can take action and break out of that anxiety, downward spiral, if you will?
That's such a great question because there is so much back and forth about this. I don't want to say argument, but debate. There's so much debate on
Friendly
this topic.
discussion. Hmm.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that sounds way better. And have you ever had a moment where you were worried about something when you went to bed and you woke up and you weren't worried about it anymore? Yeah.
Yes, I have.
I That happens all the time.
Hmm.
It's interesting because it always comes at night.
Yeah.
Not everyone's like that. Some people it comes on in the morning, but it's man, why was I so worried about it? The best way I can describe this, because I know everyone can relate to this at some point, is finances. You pull up your spreadsheets or you're budgeting and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta get this under control. And you're so worried and you feel the anxiety begin to build in your body and it's in your chest. And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doomed. And it's worst case scenario. And then you get your spreadsheets in order, you contact your bookkeeper or whatever, and you wake up in the morning, you're like, oh, wow, I'm so responsible with my money. The night before was like desolate. That's exactly how we work. And it's because stress is I love looking at stress and anxiety. Anxiety is that build up, that worry of both combined, especially that long term. But it's designed to also mobilize you. It's designed to move you in a direction of mobilizing you. And if you're interested in also looking at the biology of this, Dr. Andrew Huberman, I love. Do you?
Oh yeah, I
I'm.
love his podcast. He's from
Oh,
Stanford, correct? Yeah.
yes, he
Yeah.
is a Stanford professor, and he does an entire series on anxiety and stress. And there's one episode, and I think it's called like the biology of stress. And he gives a couple different types of techniques, and we'll go through some as well. But I love the way that he describes that it's designed to mobilize your brain, and it creates such a sense of agitation in your body that it makes you want to move or say something. So things get done. And he even goes into procrastination where people procrastinate because they're creating that sense of agitation that's going to force them to move on a biological level, even.
That's and very interesting you say that because are you familiar with Dr. Bruce Perry? He wrote a book
Mhm.
called "What Happened to You" that he co-wrote with Oprah,
Yep.
and he, of course, he's a psychiatrist. He deals with extreme trauma, childhood trauma. but he talks about the three R's on how to get someone who is in some sort of state of non-control and get them back into a state of a bit more ease. The three R's are regulation, relating, and then reasoning. And regulation is basically movement. Like the first thing you have to do when you're in some sort of uncomfortable state, mental state, or psychosomatic state, or whatever the case may be, whether it's as a
Mhm.
result of deep trauma or as a result of anxiety, which is what we're talking about here, the best thing you can do is to move, go for a walk, start doing push-ups, jumping jacks, something, go dancing, right? Dancing before you try to relate. In this case, if you're having a conversation with somebody, don't relate with the person until you get them to move. And for sure, don't try to reason before you get
Uh,
them to regulate and relate, right?
that's what
Reasoning should be
arguments
the
happen.
exactly. That's exactly how arguments happen.
Yeah.
So it seems like for this, it's all part of the same equation where movement is so important for our lives, especially when we're in a state of disease.
That is spot on. I was actually about to go there when it comes, people will say, well, what about the body side of it, the somatic side? And I always say, I know you don't want to hear this. You got to move your body. Go to the gym. And also when it comes to moving the body, social connection is also a huge component when it comes to, I wish I could remember. He's also a Stanford professor as well, and he talks specifically about anxiety and social connection, feeling like you connect, feeling like you belong. And these are when it comes to movement of the body, a walk outside. I go on a daily walk every single night after dinner. It's not only good for your digestion, but what happens here? You're processing as you're moving your physical body. It's pent up, I call it pent up energy. Breath work. If you're not, well, and here's what'll happen. Sometimes I'll have clients come to me because this is a top thing that I help my clients with. Sometimes they'll come to me and they'll say, listen, I'm not going to meditate an hour a day, so forget about it. Don't tell me about it. I'd rather go to a rage room with a bat. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to focus on that. And that's why I started getting into this more because I was like, this needs to be a practical approach for people who are very, very busy humans. I'm not going to sit and ask, is meditate? Yes, your life will probably change if you meditate an hour a day. I'm not going to say it's not good. But also, from a practical sense, if you can't calm the thoughts, then move the body first. In my process, what I do is I work on helping people process through their body, through breath work, um, through getting them to have movement, through all these things, and then we start working on the thoughts over time when the body feels more calm. Um, there are so many different yoga, breathing and movement combined, just breathing is combined too. And these are all little techniques that take just a little bit of time each and every day. And you're retraining your mind and your nervous system to slow down. You're teaching yourself that you're safe, essentially.
That's wonderful. You mentioned about a couple of times about types of anxiety as you were talking. So I'm assuming that there's different types of anxiety. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, yes. So there's different types. There is like compound anxiety. That's trauma, like how you had mentioned trauma, PTSD. Though when I say compound, and especially when we get into phobias is another type, there's thresholds of anxiety, right? And so when it talks to PTSD, it's a lot of things that can be stacked at once, or it could be one significant event. Um, Same with phobia. It could be a lot of events that have repeated over time that have stacked on top of each other, either since childhood or since last year, just a lot of repetitive things, or one significant event. It's just the threshold that your body and your mind can handle. By the way, everyone's different when it comes to this, but I'll get into that in a moment. The second one is, or the other one is situational anxiety. Like I said, public speaking, talking on a podcast, going into a meeting, getting in a car. and just having a fear of driving. These are, or maybe just a fear of driving in intersections. That's a situational. And then ongoing. Ongoing is ever since I can remember, I've had anxiety. Just my whole life. When I'll ask them, my entire life I've had it. Um, and then also social anxiety, of course. And then there's something called oddity anxiety. Oddity anxiety is like interesting types of anxiety, like a fear of buttons or a fear of, and these are the types of phobias or anxieties, by the way, that are very, very common that I see that no one wants to talk about because no one talks about it. So no one wants to talk about it. So they feel like they're on an island by themselves. But I mean, like a fear of soap, a fear of, and so all the, you'll notice I also use the word fear too, because that's it's the root. That's the root of what's going on. It's fear, it's worry. And so if we could tie it all into one, um, I usually say the root of anxiety is fear in most cases.